laying it up. I'm saying, oh, man.
Here's that last play. Magic Johnson going in, drops off the Bird. Bird puts it back off, inside to Johnson. Super basketball.
This guy got game.
They had some wonderful moments on the court, but they probably spoke to each other 4, maybe 5 times during that entire time period, and it was more like, hello, how are you this morning, Larry? I'm good, Magic. What'd you have for breakfast? Don't remember. Have a nice day.
But such curtness was hardly strange coming from Larry Bird, who was not only one of college basketball's best players, but also its biggest enigma.
I think he was a mystery to the extent that he wanted to be a mystery. He didn't enjoy doing interviews. He didn't go out of his way to do them. He wasn't particularly good at them. He was kind of like, hey, this is who I am. You want to know who I am? Watch the game. That's who I am.
I start to read materials that you're very quiet and you don't enjoy talking to newspaper people.
Well, you know, there's different kind of newspaper people. There's people that try to push you. You know, there's people try to get things out of you. Things don't even pertain to basketball, and them are the type of people I like to stay away from.
He didn't want people talking about his family. He didn't want his mother to have to deal with that or his siblings to have to deal with that.
You got to remember where Larry came from. You know, Larry was raised in a 2 or 3 room house on a railroad track. Their family probably lived on $50 a week. He was raised tough.
Larry Joe Bird grew up in southern Indiana, in the twin towns of French Lick and West Baden. The Valley, as locals call it, was a tough working-class area. Tiny and remote, it was one of the poorest places in the state.
I didn't know that people made millions of dollars. I didn't know that everybody had a family car. I was in my own cocoon. I was in a small town with the people I knew, and I thought I would live there for the rest of my life.
Arriving Pearl Harbor Day 1956, Larry was the 4th of 6 kids born to Georgia and Joe Bird. Early on, he and his older brothers earned a reputation around the Valley.
We were always considered troublemakers. We're either fighting amongst ourselves or there was always one of us fighting somebody. Larry was always one that kind of instigated things, you know.
If I get my brother in a fight with somebody his age, I was happy as hell, because I like to see him get beat up, and that's just the way it was. If I got in a scrape with some kid and my brothers didn't come to my side, they knew that when he got home, my dad was going to whip him.
Larry and my dad were best of friends. They done everything together. When my dad would go out to my grandma's house, Larry would always go with him. They'd go fishing, do a lot of things together.
But Joe Bird also had a darker side, stemming from a traumatic tour of duty in Korea.
Larry remembers waking up in the middle of the night hearing his father's blood-curdling screams from the nightmares he had had from the war. What happened to his father in the war affected his entire life. He was never able to quite get rid of whatever those demons were.
A talented craftsman, Joe Bird struggled to hold steady jobs. And even when he was working, his demons would, on occasion, drive him to the bottle.
There were times when Joe went out with the guys and had a few beers and the wages didn't come home that night. And that didn't happen every day. It happened once in a while, but when money is as tight as it was for the Birds, once in a while was a major problem for their family.
My mom sometimes worked late, and sometimes she had 2 jobs, but that's the way it was. I worked at school during my lunch hours, worked at the local grocery store, put up hay in the summer. I mean, if you wanted money, you had to get it on your own.
To young Larry, actions spoke louder than words.
He was very quiet, kind of hung to himself a little bit.
I saw Larry take an F in an English class because he had to get up in front of his peers and give a speech. So I won't do it. But he just could not get up in front of his friends and talk. He was that shy.
Of course, next thing you know, when he knew it was time for all of us together at the gymnasium, there he'd be. The minute he'd get a basketball in his hand, things were totally different.
Basketball was just, it came to me, seemed like easy. I didn't have the quickness, I didn't have jumping ability. I just thought the game out.
By his senior year at Springs Valley High, Larry Bird had sprouted into a star. But Bird was from the Valley, hardly a hotbed of talent in the big-time world of Indiana hoops.
The first thing they say, well, they don't play nobody down there. He's from French Lick. they don't play nobody.
I think that put a chip on his shoulder, always having to prove who he was and how good he was.
He was good enough for Indiana University's Bobby Knight to come calling late his senior year. And folks in the Valley couldn't have been prouder. Their local hero was heading 60 miles north to play ball for one of the best college teams in the land.
Once I got to IU, it didn't take long to realize that I was out of my cocoon, had over 30-some thousand students, that I didn't have the funds. First week and a half, I thought, man, this ain't gonna work.
He left after 24 days.
Let my mother down. She didn't talk to me for 2 months. But it didn't matter what other people said. To this day, I don't care.
Back in French Lick, Bird took to working for the city, hauling trash and painting park benches. Meanwhile, by that winter, his father's demons had taken him to an even darker place.
By this point, Joe and Georgia were divorced, and he was behind in his payments to the family. The police came by, and of course they all knew him. So Joe said, hey, I need a few hours to get my affairs together before you take me away. So he called Georgia and he said, you guys will be better off without me, and I'm gonna take my life. And he put the phone down and he killed himself. He shot himself.
When Dad passed, you know, it hurt Larry. I mean, that was his best friend. It's gone now. But Larry didn't show it a lot.
He just didn't say much, you know. He just kind of held it within. I've never heard him speak out about it at all.
I was mad when I heard about it, and I was madder after the funeral because I thought he sort of cut out on us during a tough time. But you know, he went through a lot in his life. He did what he had to do.
If Bill Hodges hadn't been as persistent as he had been, Larry Bird might never have existed in any of our minds. I believe that with all my heart. I really do.
It was Bill Hodges, a young coach from Indiana State University, who convinced Bird to give college hoops another shot. So with a promise to his mom to graduate, Bird headed to Terre Haute and ISU, a school that never so much had been to the NCAA tournament.
Once I started playing, it's the same old thing. You know, he's at a small school and he ain't playing against anybody, which is fine. Still dominated.
Wherever Hoosiers gather, they no longer talk of weather. Indiana has a new state bird. Now his claim to fame is just the way he plays the game. Indiana has a new state bird. It's not the Cardinal now. Hey Larry, take a bow. Indiana has a new state bird.
By the time he had led tiny ISU as a senior to a 33-0 record and a spot in the '79 title game, Larry Bird had become, alongside Magic Johnson, the talk of college basketball. Just a year after sharing the court on Team USA, they were back together. And the day before the big game, Magic couldn't wait to greet his old playmate.
Indiana State was on practicing, and we were waiting in the tunnel. We got there early. I wanted to definitely say hello to Larry, you know. When they came through, it was like nobody was saying nothing. I wanted to go toward him, like his guys, like made sure that he didn't say nothing. And then they kind of start snickering, like, Michigan State, you in trouble. We're going to kill you guys tomorrow.
I probably did snub him. I don't remember it, but I'm sure I did. I didn't want any, you know, like I call it love fest, hugging and slapping high fives with opponent. You're there for a reason. You're there to win a game.
That just said it's on now.
It is Indiana State against Michigan State. I'm Bryant Gumbel, and the fans here are going bananas.
I mean, let's face it, if Larry Bird were black and came from Chicago, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. They were polar opposites. One black, one white, one outgoing, one shy. That was the charm of the attraction.
The Bird against Magic. All of the superlatives have been used, and believe me, all of them have been warranted.
Heading into the tournament, Magic was the bigger star. But by tip-off, it was Bird, having hardly missed a shot in the semifinal, who had become the focus. Of fans, and more importantly,